Hi, welcome to Conflict Story, where we bring you the best and most fascinating stories just for you. Let's dive right into one of those stories. It begins like this.
I've always been a city guy, born and raised amidst the hustle and bustle of San Francisco. But as I approached my 45th birthday, I realized the relentless pace of urban life was taking its toll. The blaring horns, packed streets, and the ceaseless grind of corporate deadlines began to feel suffocating. I longed for an escape, a place where I could breathe freely and find peace. That's when I stumbled upon a life-changing opportunity. On a chilly October morning, while sipping my coffee, I came across an online listing. A cozy lakefront cottage tucked away in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. The photos were mesmerizing. A charming cedarwood cabin surrounded by towering evergreens and offering an uninterrupted view of a crystal-clear lake. I couldn't resist. I immediately called the agent and arranged a visit for the upcoming weekend. As soon as I arrived, the crisp air, filled with the scent of pine and the gentle lapping of the lake's waters, captivated me. The cottage had a rustic charm with its stone fireplace, large bay windows, and a wraparound porch perfect for admiring the serene view. After spending a weekend exploring the tranquil surroundings and envisioning a future there, I made an offer. Though it stretched my budget, I convinced myself it was worth it. The seller accepted, and within a month, I was the proud owner of a little slice of heaven. I initially planned to use it as a retreat, but my heart already knew it would one day become my permanent home. Over the next year, I spent every free moment at the cottage, slowly transforming it into my sanctuary. I taught myself woodworking to repair the aging deck, and even installed a small dock by the lake. Each improvement made it feel more like mine. My neighbors were a mix of personalities. Kind-hearted retirees who often invited me over for coffee and local farmers who shared tips on maintaining the property. But one neighbor stood out from the rest, Karen. Karen lived just up the road in a slightly larger cottage. In her mid-50s, she had a stern demeanor, with sharp eyes that seemed to scrutinize everything. Her first interaction with me set the tone for what would become an ongoing conflict. One crisp afternoon, I was clearing some fallen branches from my driveway when Karen marched over, hands on her hips. "You're doing it all wrong," she declared, her tone brimming with disdain. "That's not how we handle things in the Adirondacks." I wiped the sweat from my brow and extended a hand, attempting to introduce myself. "Hi, I'm Alex. Just moved in recently." Karen ignored my hand, narrowing her eyes instead. "Alex, huh? Well, let me tell you something. We've lived here for generations, and we know how to respect this land. City folks like you always come in thinking you own the place." I tried to explain my intentions and love for the peaceful lifestyle, but she cut me off. "Spare me the talk. Just don't mess up the area, all right?" With that, she stormed off, leaving me stunned. Over the months, Karen's hostility became a regular occurrence. She'd scold me for everything, from pruning the trees to installing a small outdoor light. "That's going to attract all kinds of bugs and ruin the natural vibe," she'd snap. I tried to remain cordial, but her antagonism tested my patience. Things reached a boiling point one summer afternoon. I had taken time off work to replace the worn shingles on the cottage roof. Halfway through the project, I heard Karen's unmistakable voice. "Alex, what are you doing up there?" Startled, I glanced down to see her standing in my yard, hands on her hips. "Replacing the shingles. They're old and leaking," I replied. Karen shook her head. "You're ruining the character of that cottage. That roof has been like that for decades. You city types just don't understand history." I'd had enough. "Karen, I own this property, and I have every right to maintain it as I see fit. If you have an issue, you're welcome to file a complaint." Her face turned red, and she jabbed a finger in my direction. "Don't think this is over. You're destroying this community, and I won't let it happen." Before I could respond, she stomped back to her house, leaving me fuming. A week later, she escalated her tactics by filing a complaint with the local zoning board, claiming my renovations violated community standards. Though her claim was baseless, it required an official inspection, wasting my time and adding unnecessary stress. The final straw came when Karen called the local sheriff, accusing me of trespassing on her property. The officer who responded was polite but visibly exasperated by the situation. After verifying my documents and listening to Karen's rant, he assured me I had nothing to worry about. Despite the tension, I refused to give up on my dream. I installed a security camera system to prevent further accusations and focused on building friendships with other neighbors. Slowly, I began hearing stories about Karen's past. She had moved to the area after a messy divorce and had clung to the mountains as her sanctuary. While I understood her attachment, it didn't excuse her hostility. One morning, I awoke to find graffiti scrawled across the side of my cottage. "Go back to the city." Though I had no proof, I was certain Karen was behind it. Furious, I filed a police report, but with no evidence, there was little they could do. It felt like a personal war, one that I was determined not to lose. As the months passed, I focused on my projects and ignored Karen as much as possible. Then one unexpected morning, she showed up at my door, visibly subdued. "Alex," she began hesitantly, "I need to apologize." Her admission caught me off guard. "For what?" I asked cautiously. "For the graffiti, the complaints, and for being such a pain. I, I realized I've become exactly the kind of person I used to despise. I was new here once too, and people weren't kind to me. I guess I took it out on you." Her words carried a sincerity I hadn't expected. Over the next few weeks, Karen made an effort to make amends. She offered to help with some repairs, and gradually, our frosty relationship thawed into a tentative friendship. I learned about her struggles and in turn shared my dreams for the cottage. Slowly but surely, I became not just a visitor in the Adirondacks, but a true part of the community. Despite our rocky start, Karen and I developed a bond, proving that even the most unlikely relationships can evolve with understanding and time. The mountains had given me more than a home. They had given me a fresh perspective on resilience, forgiveness, and the importance of community. Despite Karen's apology and our budding friendship, the tension that had brewed between us for months wasn't something that would disappear overnight. I had hoped for peace, but the wounds from her hostility still stung, and I suspected she might feel the same. Yet the mountains had a way of forcing people to coexist, and soon enough, life provided us with an opportunity to test this uneasy truce. One late spring evening, I was in the middle of restoring the small dock I'd built on the edge of the lake when the weather began to shift. Dark clouds gathered over the mountains, and the scent of rain hung heavy in the air. I decided to wrap up for the day and was just securing my tools when a loud knock sounded on my door. Opening it, I found Karen standing on my porch, her face pale and her hands gripping the straps of her overalls. "Alex, I hate to bother you," she began, her voice uncharacteristically soft, "but we've got a situation." "What's wrong?" I asked, already bracing myself for some new mountain drama. "It's Jasper," she said, referring to her aging Labrador. "He ran off earlier today when that storm started brewing, and I haven't been able to find him. He's old, Alex, and he doesn't move as well as he used to. I'm afraid he's stuck somewhere, or worse." Karen's usual defiance had melted away, replaced with genuine worry. Without hesitation, I grabbed a flashlight and my jacket. "Let's find him." We set out together, combing the nearby trails and calling Jasper's name. The storm broke just as we reached the denser part of the woods. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking us to the bone as lightning illuminated the treetops. Karen seemed almost frantic, shouting for her dog over the roar of the storm. After nearly an hour of searching, Karen's voice started to break. "He's all I have left," she admitted, her words nearly lost in the rain. "After my daughter moved to the city, it's just been me and Jasper. I can't lose him." Her vulnerability struck a chord with me. Karen's tough exterior had always been her shield, but now in the middle of a storm, it was clear how much she cared about the connections she'd made, even if they were with her dog. Finally, a faint bark broke through the thunder. We followed the sound and found Jasper tangled in a patch of thorny underbrush. The old dog whimpered as Karen rushed to free him, her hands trembling as she worked to untangle his fur. I helped lift him, and together we carried him back to her truck. By the time we returned to her cottage, the storm had begun to subside. Karen dried Jasper off and wrapped him in a blanket, her relief palpable. "Thank you, Alex," she said quietly, her eyes meeting mine. "I couldn't have done this without you." "I'm glad we found him," I replied, meaning it. That night marked a turning point in our relationship. The walls Karen had built around herself began to crumble, and I started to see her as more than just the adversarial neighbor who'd made my life difficult. She, in turn, seemed to recognize that I wasn't just some city slicker trying to disrupt her world. We weren't exactly friends yet, but the bond forged during that storm was undeniable. In the weeks that followed, Karen and I began spending more time together, albeit cautiously. She'd stop by my place with fresh vegetables from her garden, and I'd share some of the firewood I'd chopped. We'd exchange tips on maintaining our properties and swap stories about life before the mountains. It wasn't much, but it was progress. One day, as I was sanding down an old canoe I'd found in the shed, Karen approached with a curious look. "You know, Alex, I used to do a lot of kayaking back in Florida," she said. "If you need help restoring that, I've got a few tricks up my sleeve." "I'd appreciate the help," I replied. What started as a casual project turned into a shared endeavor. Over the next few weekends, we worked side by side, restoring the canoe to its former glory. Karen's knowledge was invaluable, and her stories about her life in Florida added a new dimension to our conversations. I learned about the tough decisions she'd faced as a single mother and the struggles she'd overcome to build a life in the mountains. As we launched the canoe onto the lake for its maiden voyage, Karen turned to me with a rare smile. "Not bad for a city boy," she teased. I laughed. "Not bad for a mountain woman who's secretly a Florida transplant." Her laughter echoed across the water, blending with the rustle of the trees and the gentle splash of the paddle. For the first time, it felt like we were truly on the same page. Two people trying to make the most of their lives in this wild, unpredictable place. As the summer months rolled on, the tentative peace between Karen and me grew into something more substantial. We still had our differences. She'd occasionally roll her eyes at my city habits, and I'd tease her about being a self-proclaimed mountain guardian. But our shared projects and growing camaraderie had created a bond. I began to feel like I truly belonged in the Adirondacks. But as it turned out, the mountains weren't done testing us. One humid August afternoon, I was repairing the fence along the edge of my property when Karen came jogging down the dirt road, visibly flustered. "Alex, have you seen anyone suspicious around here?" she asked, catching her breath. I set down my tools and frowned. "No, why? What's going on?" "Someone's been snooping around my place," she said, her voice laced with unease. "Last night I heard noises outside, and this morning I found footprints near my shed." Karen's concern was contagious. "Could it have been an animal?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not unless bears started wearing sneakers." "I'm telling you, Alex, something's off." We decided to investigate together, starting with her property. Sure enough, faint footprints trailed through the dirt near her shed, and the door latch looked like it had been tampered with. Karen was rattled, but her determination not to show fear was admirable. "We should notify the sheriff," I suggested. Karen hesitated, her stubborn independence flickering in her eyes. "Maybe, but let's keep an eye out ourselves first. If it happens again, then we'll call." Over the next few nights, we set up a watch system. Karen insisted on taking the first shift, despite my protest that I could handle it. I took the second shift, armed with a thermos of coffee and a flashlight. Though the nights passed without incident, the sense of unease lingered. One evening, as we sat on Karen's porch discussing the situation, she sighed and admitted, "You know, Alex, I've always prided myself on being self-sufficient, but this has me spooked. I'm not used to feeling vulnerable." Her honesty caught me off guard. "You don't have to handle everything alone, Karen. That's what neighbors are for." She gave me a small, grateful smile. Maybe having a city slicker around isn't so bad after all. Our watchful vigilance eventually paid off. One night, the security cameras I'd installed around my property caught movement near Karen's shed. I called her immediately, and together we approached cautiously, flashlights in hand. As we neared the shed, we spotted a man rummaging through a box of tools. "Hey!" Karen shouted, her voice sharp and commanding. The man froze, then bolted toward the woods. Without thinking, I took off after him, my adrenaline surging. Karen stayed behind to call the sheriff. The chase was chaotic, with branches whipping against my face and the uneven terrain threatening to trip me up. I lost sight of him briefly, but caught up when he stumbled over a fallen log. "Stop!" I yelled, trying to catch my breath. "The sheriff's on the way." The man hesitated, then slumped to the ground, defeated. He looked younger than I'd expected, probably in his early 20s, and his face was pale with fear. "I'm sorry," he stammered. "I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just needed some tools to fix my car. It broke down a few miles from here." By the time the sheriff arrived, Karen and I had managed to coax more of the story out of him. His name was Danny, and he'd been traveling cross-country when his car broke down. With no money and no cell signal, he'd resorted to desperate measures. "You should have just knocked on someone's door," Karen scolded him as the sheriff led him away. We might be mountain folk, but we're not heartless. The sheriff thanked us for our vigilance and assured us that Danny would face only a minor charge for trespassing. Karen watched the cruiser disappear down the road, her expression a mixture of relief and lingering frustration. Well, that was eventful, I said, breaking the silence. Karen huffed. Eventful, that's one way to put it. I'll be double-checking my locks from now on. But there was a hint of humor in her voice, and I knew she appreciated having someone to rely on. The incident with Danny brought us closer in a way neither of us had anticipated. It also underscored the unpredictable nature of mountain life. While we couldn't control what challenges might come our way, we learned that facing them together made all the difference. Autumn in the Adirondacks was nothing short of magical. The fiery reds, oranges, and yellows of the foliage reflected off the still surface of the lake, creating a landscape that felt almost otherworldly. But beneath the beauty, life continued with its challenges and surprises. Karen and I had settled into a rhythm of neighborly camaraderie, though life in the mountains always seemed to have a way of throwing a curveball. One crisp October morning, as I sat on my porch sipping coffee, I noticed Karen's old pickup truck idling in her driveway. She appeared to be struggling with something in the back. Curious, I wandered over, mug in hand. Need a hand, Ashatsi? I called. Karen looked up, her face a mix of frustration and embarrassment. It's this generator, she said, motioning to the bulky machine in the truck bed. Thing's been acting up for weeks and now it won't start at all. I'm no good with engines, and I've got no backup if the power goes out. Let's take a look, I offered, setting my mug on the truck's tailgate. After some tinkering, it was clear the generator needed more than a quick fix. Looks like you'll need a new part, I said, wiping grease off my hands. Why don't we take it into town? The hardware store might have what we need. Karen hesitated, then nodded. Fine, but you're driving. This thing's already given me a headache. The trip into town was uneventful, save for Karen's colorful commentary on the tourists crowding the roads. Leaf peepers, she muttered as we passed a slow-moving SUV. Can't drive for beans, but they sure love to stop in the middle of the road to take pictures. At the hardware store, we managed to find the part and headed back to her place. With some effort, we got the generator running again. Karen's face lit up as it roared to life. You're not half bad at this, she admitted grudgingly. Maybe you've got a bit of mountain man in you after all. High praise coming from you, I teased. As we worked, a thought had been nagging at me, and I decided to voice it. Karen, have you ever thought about organizing something for the community? You know, to bring everyone together. Maybe a fall festival or something? She gave me a skeptical look. Why on earth would I do that? Because you're practically the mayor of this mountain, I said with a grin. People respect you, and honestly, I think it could be good for everyone. Bring the community closer, and maybe even help folks like Danny, who's clearly struggling. Karen mulled it over, and to my surprise, she didn't dismiss the idea outright. I'll think about it, she said finally. A few weeks later, Karen surprised me by showing up at my door with a stack of flyers. I'm going to need your help, she said briskly, handing me one. The flyer read, Mountain Harvest Festival. All welcome. Over the next month, we threw ourselves into organizing the event. Karen's cottage became festival headquarters, with neighbors stopping by to volunteer their time and resources. We planned games, a potluck, and even a raffle to raise funds for local needs. The whole community got involved, and even the most reclusive neighbors emerged from their homes to lend a hand. The festival day arrived with perfect weather. The lake sparkled under the autumn sun, and the air buzzed with the sounds of laughter and music. Karen manned the raffle booth, her usual stern demeanor replaced with something almost resembling joy. I spent most of the day helping set up games and chatting with neighbors. For the first time, it felt like we were truly a unified community. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the mountains, Karen and I stood by the lake, watching the festivities wind down. You did good, city slicker, she said, nudging my shoulder. We did good, I corrected her. She smiled, a rare, genuine smile. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I'm glad you moved here, Alex. You've brought something to this mountain that we didn't even know we needed. I raised my glass of cider in a toast. Here's to the mountain, to community, and to unlikely friendships. Karen clinked her glass against mine. I'll drink to that. The festival marked a turning point, not just for me and Karen, but for the entire mountain community. The barriers that had once divided us seemed smaller now, easier to overcome. And as I looked out over the lake, surrounded by laughter and warmth, I knew I'd found my home. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow.